All right, so we are going to do that second part of the exponents that are rational, meaning that they have a fraction, right, or a ratio in them. So we're going to learn to simplify some expressions with rational exponents, right? That just means that I have an exponent that has a fraction in it, okay? And write rational powers, right? That's what that is, using radicals. So a rational exponent, as I just said, is that has fraction, okay? And so what we're talking about here, right, is how to kind of transfer between the two forms, right? The fractional exponent form and the radical, where we're talking about the nth root of something. So any root, right, I'm using that word nth to mean some root, the first, the second, the third, the fourth, right, whatever root I'm talking about. So we can write each root using a rational exponent. If n is an integer, greater than 1, so we're only talking about positive integers here. Let's say my integer here is 2, right? And I'm talking about the square root of 2. And I have an exponent here. I'll use the letter E. It could be 4, it could be 7, it could be whatever it is. And then I have an index here. So if there is no index, remember it's a 2. But if there is an index, then it would be a 3 or 4 or whatever the number is that you see there, is the same as saying that same big number, right? The radicand, the thing under the exponent, 2 to the exponent divided by the index. Okay, and that's an I there. It won't really look like one. So examples here, and we'll talk about what they look like. All right, so we're just kind of transferring between the two forms here. So if I have the cube root of 7, right, remember there is a little 1 exponent there on the 7, okay? So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that better, but there is a 1 exponent on the 7, which means, sorry, it's not zooming very quickly, there we go. Let's focus that. All right, which means that the exponent, right, of 1, right, in the fraction form would be the same as saying 7 is the big number, right, over 1 to the third power. So that exponent goes on top, okay, and the radical, the index goes on bottom, right? The number that's on the radical symbol goes on bottom. So 7 to the 1/3 power is the same as saying the cube root of 7. Let's look at the next one, right? So x, the 5th root of x, right? It's going to be the same thing. There's a little 1 on that guy, right? We're not thinking about it, and we're not seeing it, but it is actually there, is like x to the 1/5 power. Okay, so x to the 1/5 power is the same as the 5th root of x, right? What number 5 times, right, multiplies to give me that x? And then here you see, I see nothing, I see no numbers, but we have to remember that this is a 1, and this, when we don't have a number, is a 2, because the standard one is the square root, right? So square root means 2, and so this would be y to the 1/2 power, which means what is the square root, right, of y? Okay, so let's look at a couple that don't just have ones in them, some numbers below that have some other numbers in them besides. Actually, no, I lied. These ones all have ones too. So going the other way, 8 to the 1/4 power, right? So again, that 8 is the big number. The 8 is going to stay the big number, right? But where did the 1 come from? Remember, it's exponent over index. So this was the exponent, and this was the index. I just wrote E instead of 4, sorry. 4. True here, right? We have z. Z is the big number under the radical symbol. 1 is the exponent. 6 is the index. So 1 goes here, right? And 6 goes here. And then we have m, again, to the 1. And then the 7th root of m to the 1 is the same as saying m to the 1/7 power. So converting radical form to exponent form, right? What did we just say? Here's the base, right? This is the radicand under the radical. And up here we have an exponent. Okay, I'm going to use E to represent exponent. and I'm going to use I to represent index. Okay, so when we go to the fraction form, the exponent is over the index. So think EOI, exponent over index. Okay, exponent over index. And if you can remember that, then the backwards should also be possible, right? That this is the exponent on top, and it goes with the exponent on the place where the exponent goes on this base, and the index is here. Okay, so let's look at some practice here. These ones get a little bit trickier. Do a couple more examples. All right, so we have a 3 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. Remember, exponent over index. So the 3 was my exponent, and the 2 was my index. I don't need to write a 2 because the square root is the standard one, right? That's the one that we don't necessarily need to rewrite. 5 is still my big number. My exponent was 3, and my root, or my index, was 4. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and let you do those other two on that one. The bottom isn't any different. It's just the opposite way, right? So we're going the other way, and just because there's parentheses, it doesn't change this, right? It's saying that, hold on a second. All right, I had a little tickle in my throat there. Okay, so this fourth root of 2, right, to the third power, it's the same thing as if the 3 were under, right, the radical here. The 3 is the exponent of this. So the exponent goes with the on the top, right, and the index, or the 4, goes on the bottom. So the fourth root of 2 to the third power is the same as 2 to the 3/4 power. Okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to let you do the rest of them. And then there's some other practice over here. It's a little bit additional kind of practice on how to do those, keeping those straight in your head. I hope these are starting to make sense, because when you go on to Delta Math, there'll be some practice that's going to have you kind of make some jumps, right, and understand how to use these in some different ways. So take a second to go through these, and then if you're getting it, try the Delta Math. Good luck.